I woke up in a morgue drawer. Not dead, obviously, but close enough that someone at Chicago Memorial had made the call to move my body downstairs. The tag on my toe read Jane Doe, even though my driver's license was in the purse they'd cataloged with my personal effects. 27 years old, a gunshot wound from a carjacking gone wrong, and my own family couldn't be bothered to claim me. The nurse who found me breathing told me later that she screamed so loud the security guard on the third floor came running. I spent 6 weeks in the ICU after that, drifting in and out of consciousness with a collapsed lung and a shattered collarbone. When I finally woke up for real, fully aware, able to speak, the first thing I saw was a whiteboard across from my bed with the words, "Patient, unclaimed" written in blue marker. Unclaimed. Like a suitcase circling an empty baggage carousel. My name is Naomi Jeffries. My father, Charles Jeffries, runs one of the largest commercial real estate firms in the Midwest, Jeffries Holdings. You've probably driven past buildings with his name on the cornerstone in Detroit, Milwaukee, Indianapolis. The man is worth $1.6 billion on paper, and his daughter was lying in a public hospital tagged as a Jane Doe, because nobody from his office returned the hospital's calls. I found that out from a social worker named Denise, who sat at my bedside the afternoon I woke up. She had kind eyes and a folder full of bad news. "We tried your emergency contact 11 times, she said. "A Mr. Charles Jeffries. His assistant told us he was unavailable and that the family had no one by your name on their priority list." "That's my father." Denise paused. She'd clearly heard worse, but this still registered on her face. "We also called a Vanessa Jeffries and a Kyle Jeffries. My stepmother and my half-brother. Vanessa's office said she didn't recognize the name. Kyle's number went straight to voicemail every time." I stared at the ceiling tiles. 6 weeks unconscious, and not one of them had come. Not one of them had even acknowledged I existed. "There's someone here, though," Denise added carefully. "He's been coming every day since you were admitted. Says he's your attorney. Send him in." Robert Tanaka walked into my hospital room carrying a leather messenger bag and looking like he hadn't slept in a month. At 52, my mother's oldest friend still wore his worry on his face the way some men wore cologne. Impossible to miss. "You scared the hell out of me," he said, pulling a chair close to the bed. "How'd you even know I was here?" "Your mother made me promise to keep tabs on you. I have a standing alert with 3 hospitals in the Chicago area. When an unidentified woman matching your description was admitted with a gunshot wound, I came running. My mother, Grace Tanaka Jeffries, though she dropped the Jeffries after the divorce. She died of pancreatic cancer when I was 12, leaving behind a daughter who worshipped her and a husband who had already moved on with Vanessa, his interior designer, 6 months before the funeral." Robert set his bag on the floor. "Naomi, we need to talk about what your father did while you were unconscious." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "He filed a petition to have you declared legally incapacitated. Claimed the brain injury from the shooting left you in a persistent vegetative state. He got a judge to sign off on it 3 weeks ago." "Why would he do that?" "Because of what your mother left you. And because he just found out it exists. Here's what you need to understand about my family. My mother was the architect of everything my father has. Not metaphorically, literally. She was the one who saw the potential in buying distressed commercial properties during the 2008 crash. She built the financial models, negotiated with the banks, structured the deals that turned a struggling property management company into a real estate empire. My father's contribution was his name, his handshake, and his willingness to take credit. When she got sick, she knew exactly what would happen. She'd watched Vanessa circling for 2 years, watched my father slowly erasing her from the company's story, replacing her name on documents with his own, conveniently forgetting to mention her at investor dinners. So she made arrangements. Robert opened his bag and pulled out a document I'd never seen before. "This is the original operating agreement for what became Jeffries Holdings. Your mother owned 60%. Your father owned 40%. She was the majority partner from day one. I knew she helped start the company, but she didn't help. She built it. Your father was a mid-level property manager at Cushman Wakefield when they met. She had an MBA from Booth and a vision for acquiring distressed assets. He had charm and a Rolodex. She supplied everything else. Then how did he end up as sole owner? After the divorce, the settlement gave him operational control, but your mother retained her equity stake through a holding entity called Grace Capital Partners. It's a Delaware LLC. She filed it herself. Your father either never knew about it or never understood what it meant. And when she died, Robert pulled out a second document. Your mother established the Grace Tanaka Trust 18 months before she passed. The trust holds her 60% stake in the original entity, plus various other assets she'd been accumulating separately. Total current value, based on the last independent appraisal, is approximately $740 million. $740 million. My mother, who died in a 3-bedroom house in Evanston because she refused to take a cent more than she needed from the divorce, had quietly built a fortune that dwarfed what my father showed on his balance sheet. Why didn't you tell me before? Because the trust has conditions. Your mother designed it to activate only under specific circumstances. One of those circumstances is if your father ever formally abandoned you or attempted to strip your legal rights. The incapacitation filing. The moment that judge signed the order, the trust activated. You now control the majority stake in the entity that owns the real property underlying Jeffries Holdings. Your father has been operating a $1.6 billion company on a foundation he doesn't actually own. Robert handed me a small envelope. Inside was a key card, matte black with a silver stripe. Your mother had this made before she died. It grants access to every system, every server, every filing cabinet in the Jeffries Holdings headquarters. She was CTO before your father rewrote the org chart. Her administrative credentials were never revoked because he never knew they existed. I held the card in my palm. It weighed almost nothing. It meant everything. Robert, what's happening at the company right now? Your father is hosting the annual Investor Summit this Friday at the Palmer House. 300 investors, major media coverage, and he plans to announce Kyle as the new president of the company. Kyle, my half-brother who failed the real estate licensing exam twice and spent most of his 20s managing a bottle service table at a club in Scottsdale. That Kyle. There's more. Robert's expression darkened. He's also planning to announce that you've been permanently removed from any future role in the company due to, and I'm quoting the draft press release, tragic and irreversible cognitive decline. He's going to lie about brain damage to 300 investors. He's going to lie about everything. He's been doing it for 20 years. The only difference is now he's doing it on a stage. I looked at the keycard again, running my thumb along the silver stripe. My mother's fingerprints were probably embedded in the coating of this thing, one more invisible layer of her genius. When's the summit start? Friday, 10 a.m. You have 4 days. Then I need to get out of this hospital. Let me tell you about the 15 years before the shooting, because they matter. After my mother died, Vanessa moved into our house within a month. She redecorated everything. New furniture, new paint, new curtains. My mother's home office, where she'd built the models that made my father rich, became Vanessa's yoga studio. I was 12, grieving, and suddenly living with a woman who treated me like an inconvenience that came with the floor plan. Kyle was 10 when Vanessa married my father, and from day one, the hierarchy was clear. Kyle got the private school. I got transferred to public. Kyle got a car for his 16th birthday. I took the bus until I saved enough from my after-school job to buy a used Honda with 180,000 miles on it. But the real cruelty was subtler than that. It was Vanessa introducing me at parties as Charles's ward, not his daughter. It was my father skipping my college graduation because Kyle had a soccer tournament the same weekend. It was being given a desk in the basement of Jeffries Holdings while Kyle got a corner office with a lake view, and being told to be grateful for the opportunity. I worked in that basement for 6 years. No windows, no title, no credit. But every major deal that crossed my father's desk passed through my hands first. The Lakeshore Tower acquisition? I found the tax lien that made the deal possible. The Milwaukee portfolio? I built the financial model at 2 in the morning while Kyle was in Miami posting bottle-popping videos on Instagram. My father knew. He had to know. The quality of work coming from the basement versus the quality coming from Kyle's corner office, there was no comparison. But acknowledging me meant acknowledging my mother. And Vanessa had spent 15 years making sure that name was never spoken in our house. So I worked. I documented. I saved every email, every model, every late-night revision. Not because I was planning revenge. Because my mother taught me that your work should always speak for itself, even if nobody's listening yet. Robert spent Tuesday and Wednesday turning his law office into a command center. He'd been building a case for years, quietly, methodically, the way my mother would have done it. I sat across from his desk while he laid out the evidence. First, the ownership records. He spread out incorporation documents, amendments, and transfer filings. Your father restructured the company 3 times after the divorce. Each time, your mother's name disappeared a little more. By 2015, every public filing listed him as sole founder and majority owner. But the Delaware LLC sits underneath all of it. Grace Capital Partners holds the original equity. Everything your father built, he built on land your mother owns. Metaphorically and, in several cases, literally. She bought the parcels before the company acquired the buildings. Second, the work product. Robert opened a laptop. I've been collecting evidence of your contributions for 6 years. Emails you sent at 3 a.m., with deal analyses that appeared word for word in Kyle's presentations the next morning. Financial models with your metadata still embedded in the file properties. A paper trail proving you were the brain behind every major acquisition. How did you get access to my emails? Your mother built a mirror server before she died. Every email sent from Jeffries Holdings gets copied to a secure backup that she controlled. That access passed to me when she died, and now it passes to you. He showed me a specific email thread. This is from October. Kyle presented the Indianapolis mixed-use development to the board. Here's your analysis. Sent to him the night before. Same numbers. Same projections. Same typo in cell G47 of the spreadsheet. He didn't even fix the typo? He never does. Robert almost smiled. Third, and this is what will matter most on Friday. He pulled up a video file. Your mother installed security cameras in the executive conference room. Hidden ones, authorized under her CTO clearance. I have footage of every board meeting for the last 15 years. I watched a clip. Kyle, standing at the head of the table, reading from notes he clearly didn't understand, stumbling over terms like cap rate and debt service coverage ratio, while board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. 4 of those board members have reached out to me privately, Robert said. Margaret Zhou, David Espinoza, Sandra Okafor, and Bill Patterson. They've suspected the truth for years. They just needed someone with standing to act. And now I have standing. Now you have $740 million worth of standing. My phone rang Thursday evening. My father's name on the screen. First time in over a year. Naomi. His voice was the same one he used for closing deals. Warm on the surface, transactional underneath. I heard you're recovering. That's good news. Good news would have been a visit, or a phone call, or not filing papers to declare me a vegetable. A pause. That was a legal formality. For the company's protection. Your protection, you mean. Let's not make this adversarial. I'm calling because Kyle mentioned you might have some confusion about your role going forward. We'd like to offer you a settlement, $200,000, and a letter of recommendation, for 6 years of work. Generous, all things considered. Vanessa suggested 50. Of course she did. Sign the papers, Naomi. Come to the summit tomorrow. Smile for the cameras, and then move on with your life. You're young, you'll land on your feet. And if I don't sign? His warmth evaporated. Then I'll make sure every firm in this city knows you're unstable. The shooting, the hospital stay, the incapacitation ruling, it paints a picture. Nobody hires damaged goods. Like you told people about Mom? That she was difficult? Irrational? That the divorce was because she couldn't handle pressure? Your mother is not relevant to this conversation. She's relevant to everything. You just don't know it yet. I hung up. Robert, who'd been listening, nodded slowly. He just threatened you on a recorded line. He doesn't know it's recorded. He doesn't know a lot of things, including the fact that Margaret Jo just confirmed she'll second a motion for emergency board review if you call for one. I looked at the keycard sitting on the table between us. 4 days ago I woke up tagged as unclaimed. Tomorrow, in front of 300 witnesses, my father would learn that the daughter he discarded was the only thing standing between him and the truth he'd been running from for 20 years. Friday morning, 6:45. I stood in Robert's guest room, adjusting a charcoal Tom Ford suit that his wife, Sarah, had picked up from Michigan Avenue the day before. My mother's jade bracelet, the one piece of jewelry Vanessa never managed to take, sat cool against my wrist. "You look like her?" Robert said from the doorway. Grace wore jade to every important meeting. Said it was good luck. She didn't believe in luck. She believed in preparation. My phone lit up with messages. Margaret Jo was in position at the Palmer House. Sandra Okafor had briefed the institutional investors. David Espinoza was seated near the media section. A reporter from the Tribune named Angela Morrison, who'd been investigating irregularities in Jeffries Holdings filings for 18 months, had front-row credentials. One final text from my father. "Last chance. Don't embarrass yourself." I didn't reply. The Palmer House ballroom was everything my father loved about power. Crystal chandeliers, gilded moldings, 300 people in expensive clothes ready to applaud whatever he told them. Banners along the walls read Jeffries Holdings, building tomorrow. I watched from a service corridor on the security monitors Robert had arranged access to. My father worked the crowd like a politician, handshake, shoulder clasp, knowing laugh. Vanessa glided beside him in head-to-toe Chanel, touching arms and tilting her head at precisely calculated angles. Kyle stood near the bar, surrounded by younger investors, holding court about leadership vision while nursing what looked like his third mimosa. At 9:55, they moved toward the stage. At 9:58, my father took the podium. "Good morning, and welcome to the future of Jeffries Holdings." He launched into his speech with practiced ease, hitting all the marks. 20 years of growth, billions in assets, a legacy built on vision, and family values. I almost admired the performance. He'd been rehearsing this lie for so long it probably felt true to him. Which is why I'm proud to announce that my son, Kyle Jeffries, will assume the role of president, effective immediately. Kyle stood. Scattered applause. He waved with the confidence of someone who'd never earned anything, but had been given everything. And Vanessa Jeffries will serve as executive chairwoman, ensuring our strategic direction remains aligned with the values that built this company. Vanessa rose. Gracious smile. The crowd responded warmly. She'd always been better at the performance than the work. My father's expression shifted to something rehearsed and somber. "Now, I must address a difficult family matter. Some of you may know that my daughter, Naomi, was involved in a violent incident several weeks ago. It's with deep sadness that I must share that her injuries have resulted in significant cognitive impairment. She will not be able to continue in any capacity with the firm. We've made arrangements for her long-term care, and wish her peace in her recovery." I watched 300 faces absorb this lie. Some looked sympathetic. Others simply nodded and moved on mentally, already calculating what Kyle's presidency meant for their portfolios. Margaret Jo caught Sandra Okafor's eye across the ballroom. 9:59. I stepped out of the corridor and walked toward the executive entrance, a side door that led directly to the stage wing, accessible only by keycard. My mother had used this entrance when she was running the company. My father probably forgot it existed. I pressed the matte black card against the reader. Nothing happened for one heartbeat. Then the light turned green and the lock clicked open. The sound of my heels on the marble stage floor cut through my father's next sentence like a knife. 300 heads turned. I felt every pair of eyes land on me, and I kept walking. My father saw me, and the color drained from his face. "Naomi, you shouldn't be here. You're not well." I climbed the 3 steps to the stage. Kyle had half risen from his chair, his mimosa courage evaporating in real time. Vanessa gripped the arm of her seat so hard I could see the tendons in her hand from 10 feet away. "Good morning," I said, and my voice carried across the silent ballroom without a microphone. "I apologize for the interruption, but I believe your investors deserve accurate information before making decisions about the future of this company." "Security," my father hissed. I held up the keycard. "I have executive-level system access granted by Grace Tanaka, co-founder and original majority partner of the entity that became Jeffries Holdings. I'm not going anywhere." The security team looked at each other, then at the keycard, then at my father. Nobody moved. I stepped to the podium. "My name is Naomi Jeffries, daughter of Grace Tanaka. For 6 years, I've worked out of a windowless basement in the Jeffries Holdings building, producing every major deal analysis, every acquisition model, and every strategic plan that this company has executed. Everything Kyle Jeffries has presented to you came from my desk. And today, I can prove it." Robert stood from his seat in the 4th row. The screens behind me flickered to life. The first image was the original operating agreement. Grace Tanaka, 60%. Charles Jeffries, 40%. The gasps were audible. "This is the founding document of this company. My mother was the majority owner. She retained that equity through an entity called Grace Capital Partners, which she established before the divorce and which has been legally active this entire time." "That document is fraudulent," my father shouted, but his voice cracked on the last word. "It was notarized by the state of Delaware and filed with the Secretary of State's office," Robert announced from his seat. "I can provide chain of custody for every page." The next slide showed my mother's trust documents. The Grace Tanaka Trust was valued at $740 million and designed to activate when my father formally abandoned me. 3 weeks ago, he filed incapacitation papers. That filing triggered the transfer. I now control the majority stake in the foundational entity of Jeffries Holdings. The room erupted. Investors were on their phones. Cameras flashed from the media section. Angela Morrison from the Tribune was writing so fast her pen was a blur. I clicked to the next slide. Emails. Dozens of them. Time-stamped between midnight and 5 a.m. Next to each email, the corresponding presentation Kyle had given to the board, word for word identical. These are my work products next to Kyle's presentations. Every strategy he's claimed for the past 6 years originated in my analysis. The metadata is intact, the timestamps are verified, and in several cases, my typos survived his copy-paste. Kyle stood up. "That's a lie. I built those strategies with my team." "What team, Kyle?" I turned to face him. "Name one person on your team. Name the cap rate on the Indianapolis deal you presented last quarter. Name the seller on the Lakeshore Tower acquisition." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Margaret Jo rose from the audience. "As a member of the audit committee, I've had concerns about the discrepancy between the quality of strategic presentations and the actual competency demonstrated by the presenting executive. What we're seeing today confirms those concerns." David Espinoza stood next. "I'd like to call for an emergency board session. Right here, right now, as provided for under Section 7.3 of our corporate bylaws." "You can't do this," my father said, but his voice had lost its command. 5 board members can invoke an emergency session in the presence of shareholders," Sandra Okafor said, standing. "We have 6, then 7, then 8. "I move for a vote of no confidence in Charles Jeffries as CEO," Margaret Jo announced. "Seconded," said Bill Patterson. The vote was swift. 11 of 14 board members raised their hands. My father watched each hand go up like counting bullets. Motion carried. The ballroom was chaos. Beautiful, justified chaos. Vanessa tried to leave through a side exit, but the press had every door covered. Kyle sat frozen in his chair, staring at the email comparisons on the screen, like he was seeing his own autopsy report. My father gripped the podium. "This is a hostile takeover. You'll hear from my lawyers." "Your lawyers work for the company," Margaret Jo said calmly. "A company whose board just voted you out. I'd suggest finding new ones. I waited for the noise to settle, then spoke one final time from the podium. I'm not here to destroy this company. I'm here to restore it to what my mother intended. Charles, you have a choice. You can fight this publicly, drag the firm through litigation while the stock craters, or you can accept a transition. Advisory role, retained equity, preserved reputation. Robert has the terms prepared. I pulled out the document. You can walk out of here as a man who recognized his daughter's talent and stepped aside gracefully, or as a man who built an empire on his dead wife's work and got caught. Your call. The room held its breath. Vanessa seized his arm and whispered urgently. Kyle nodded frantically from his chair. My father looked at the 300 faces staring at him, the board members who'd turned, the investors recording on their phones, the reporter in the front row, whose story was about to end his public legacy one way or another. He picked up the pen from the podium and signed. Let the record show that Charles Jeffries accepts the transition terms, Margaret Jo announced. All board members in favor of appointing Naomi Jeffries to the board of directors, effective immediately. 14 hands. Unanimous. Angela Morrison's Tribune article went live before I left the building. The headline read, The Basement Architect, How Naomi Jeffries Built a Billion-Dollar Empire from a Windowless Room. Bloomberg picked it up within the hour. CNBC ran a segment that evening. By Saturday morning, the story was trending nationally, but I wasn't watching the coverage. I was sitting in what used to be my basement office, alone, looking at the bare walls where I'd spent 6 years working in silence. Robert found me there. The board wants to discuss CEO succession. Your name is the only one on the list. I don't want to be CEO. I want to be Chief Investment Officer. Find a CEO who can run operations. I'll do what I do best, which is find the deals, build the models, and make this company grow. That's what my mother would have done. He smiled. That's exactly what Grace would have said. The following weeks moved fast. Kyle was reassigned to a junior property management role in the Milwaukee office. He fought it for about 48 hours before Vanessa told him to take it and be quiet. To his credit, or maybe just his survival instinct, he showed up on his first day and actually tried. Vanessa resigned with a standard severance package. She moved to Palm Beach. I heard she started an interior design business there. Good for her. Distance was the kindest thing either of us could offer the other. My father occupied his advisory office on the 4th floor, 2 levels below the C-suite. I had his nameplate updated to read Charles Jeffries, advisory chairman. Every morning he walked past the lobby where a new portrait hung beside the elevator. My mother, Grace Tanaka, at 31 years old, the year she founded the company. He never commented on it, but security told me he stopped in front of it every morning for at least a minute before heading upstairs. 3 months after the summit, I got an email from him at 1 a.m. Naomi, your mother saw everything clearly. I spent 20 years pretending I didn't need her vision. The truth is, I never had my own. You do. That's the difference between us. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to know that I see it now. Too late, but I see it. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Robert with a note. File this. Don't delete it. Don't respond. There would be no reconciliation scene. No tearful hug in the hallway. Some relationships aren't broken. They were never built in the first place. You can't repair what was never constructed. But I did keep the monthly dinners. My father, Kyle, when he was in town, and me. Neutral restaurant, 2-hour maximum. No discussion of the past. Not forgiveness. Just the bare minimum of adult coexistence. It was more than he'd given me. It was also all I was willing to give him. The Grace Tanaka Foundation launched 6 months later with $30 million in initial funding, supporting first-generation women entrepreneurs. I named the flagship program the Basement Fellowship, awarded to women doing exceptional work in roles where they receive no recognition. The application essays broke my heart every quarter. Hundreds of women working in basements of their own, literal and figurative, building empires for people who would never say their names. I couldn't save all of them, but I could make sure the world knew they existed. A year later, I sat in my corner office, the one with the lake view that Kyle used to have, reading the Harvard Business Review piece I'd been asked to write. I called it The Weight of Invisible Work. It opened with something my mother told me when I was 11, the year before she died. She was sitting at her desk in the home office that would become Vanessa's yoga studio, and she looked up from her laptop and said, "Naomi, people will take credit for your work your entire life. Let them. But keep receipts." I kept the receipts, Mom. Every email. Every model. Every 3 a.m. revision. And when the time came, those receipts were worth $740 million, and the truth. The jade bracelet still sits on my wrist. I wear it to every board meeting, every investor dinner, every important decision. Not for luck. My mother didn't believe in luck. She believed that preparation, patience, and a well-structured Delaware LLC could outlast any amount of arrogance. She was right. If you're watching this, and you're the person doing the real work while someone else takes the bow, I need you to hear something. Your worth doesn't decrease because someone refuses to acknowledge it, but your documentation of that worth might be the most important thing you ever create. Keep receipts. Build alliances outside the system that undervalues you. And understand that patience isn't passivity, it's preparation. My mother prepared for 15 years. I prepared for 6. And when my father made his most expensive mistake, we were both ready. He just didn't know there were 2 of us. Thank you for listening. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to Messed Up Family Revenge so you don't miss what comes next. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been the invisible one doing all the work? I want to hear your story. Because every basement architect deserves a corner office. It's just a matter of time.